I know you've all probably been given a large dose of online education lately, so I appreciate you jumping on, and hopefully you can learn a thing or two about digital today and how that can help your business really get through this crazy time. And I promise I'll try and keep this as information-based and provide as much value to you as I can over the next hour that we spend together here. I'm going to switch this over to my screen real quick. We good to go? Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about digital and how that can help your business. As she mentioned, I'm Nikki Knuckles. I am founder and creative director behind Doodle Dog Creative, and we're a brand design, web design, and digital strategy agency based out of Austin. So we started about 10 years ago and kind of fell headfirst into the wedding industry and event industry, and have now launched about 350 brands in that industry specifically all over the world. So that's really given us the opportunity to hone in on that target demographic and what that market is really looking for and how they behave online. So we know, here's where they want to click and here's what makes them connect to a brand, and here's how we can help guide them from one part of a brand and a website to the next. So today we're going to talk a lot about that kind of thing. As I mentioned, the current economic situation has completely turned buyer behavior upside down. So we understand that everyone is kind of tossing these words around, asking if they should pivot and what they should pivot, and if that means their entire services need to change, or if it's simply just parts of their brand experience and how people interact with their brand that needs to change. So you won't walk away today understanding if a big pivot is in your future, but what you can walk away with today is a better understanding of how you can use digital to really interact and provide that same experience or a similar experience to your customers online as you've always been able to do in the past. So that's the goal, is to really create that experience and make them still feel like people are a part of your brand. So I've always said your business is digital, our business is digital, everyone's business is digital. And up until a couple months ago, I used to get some funny looks about that. And, it was always something where people would think, my business I don't have as much to do with digital because I'm referral based, or, I work in live events, so digital isn't as important to me. Obviously now that's completely changed, and digital is where your target demographic lives and breathes and experiences life. So you absolutely should have a focus on digital and how that can play a part in your business and really simplify the entire process of working together before, during, and after the experience with your brand. So before you can really engage in a digital marketing campaign, you want to make sure you understand what a digital marketing funnel looks like. So what that is it's essentially a cocktail, as we always describe it, of different tactics and techniques that can help your business bring in more targeted traffic, attract that traffic, and get qualified leads, people who are ready to invest what you're looking for people to invest in, and really nurture customers so they're able to share their experience with others. So it starts with engagement. Engagement is really considered anything where you're putting out information to help draw traffic and people's eyes back to your brand. So when you have that engagement, that might be social media, it might be directory listings, paid advertising, anything like that where you're trying to engage with other people and have that conversation starter. The next step of the process is the education and research component. This is where the website plays in really heavily, because that's where you're trying to really educate your audience and tell them how you're solving their problem. And they're there to find that out. So if you're not going to tell them that clearly and concisely on the site, it's hard for them to want to choose you. The next step is justification. So when you want to tell somebody why it's justified that they should spend and invest what they should with you and why you're the right fit for them, you always want to provide those confidence boosters. And that can range anything from press badges where you've been featured, or certain albums on your website that showcase, for instance, venues that you've worked at that are aligned with your target demographic. And having that information right there and subliminal messaging in front of them, that they can feel that confidence without you having to spell it out for them. The next step is purchase. For many of us, we're service businesses. This isn't necessarily an actual purchase online, like an e-commerce purchase where they walk away spending a credit card and, you know, have a product. But this is also when somebody fills in a contact form on your website and makes that next step to engage your services. Adoption is next. So this is where people start to kind of lose the fact that digital is still a part of their marketing plan. Is, you know, everybody thinks of it in terms of bringing the sale into the site and what to do with it, but people forget that it can also be part of the post-purchase. So when you're doing in the adoption phase of digital campaigning, it's all about onboarding and implementation. So how can you simplify that process of onboarding somebody and really allow that to be convenient for them, for your user, and what can you do to simplify it all, really? Retention is creating that satisfaction and giving people an option to tell you why they're satisfied and tell other people. Expansion is your upsell. So there's plenty of spots we'll talk about here today too, where people you can add a little pop-up or you can add little things here and there that will increase your options of upsell or tell somebody about something that you can also be doing that you may not have been able to do during a face-to-face. And then creating advocates for your brand. The end-all goal in all of this is making sure that they then tell the next person about you. And that's the hardest part because so many of the reviews online, people want to make reviews if they're unsatisfied, but you want people to be your advocate and your brand cheerleader. So giving them the option to do that, we'll talk about a little bit today too. So we're gonna focus on sort of a 3-step solution today of things you guys can do on your own for the most part from home. So anytime we start on a new project where somebody already has a website, we really dive into auditing their site first. And when we do a site audit, we have a pretty large checklist that we go through, and there's plenty of information on it that we check off, and we're going to abbreviate that a little bit today, but it's really about making sure that your website is set up to be your hub for all of your information. So any marketing ideas that you're doing or sending out there, we want people to want to come back to your site and treat that as your hub. So we'll audit those to make sure you have the basics. Step 2, how to start engaging online with your audience and making sure that does direct the traffic back to your site. And step 3 is creating that convenience and making it super easy for them in a world that is not convenient right now. So we'll start with the audit here. So each time somebody visits your website, you have about a 3-second window on average where people will decide whether or not they want to stay or not. So that's not very long. 3 seconds gives them enough opportunity to really decide if they like the look of it for the most part. They don't have enough time to read things. They don't have enough time to really decide whether or not you're the right level of service. It's really more about the visual at that point. So you want to obviously make sure that your visual is cohesive and memorable and easy to navigate. So one trick is that we always tell people when you're looking at your site, if you can cover up your logo on your website and hold your hand in front of it, and then nothing else feels like it differentiates your brand from another one or from your competitor, that's where you have a problem. Nobody's going to remember it if that's all you have to do to hide your brand on it. So making sure that it's memorable is huge. Making sure that everything's cohesive and making sure that it's easy to navigate. One of the biggest problems we find is people trying to do clever names across their navigation, and it doesn't work. People get distracted, they can't find what they're looking for, and they leave. So judgments on a company's credibility are about 75% based on the company's site design, which means everyone's going to your site, whether they're a referral or not. So this needs to be in a really good position. One way we always do a little exercise with some of our clients who are looking to see if their site is reflective of their brand or not is, and this is a little different now with everything being closed, but we tell everyone to either visualize what their brick and mortar would look like if they don't have one, or think back to when you had one open and what that looked like for somebody to experience that. So when somebody walked in that front door, what did they see when they looked around? What did they experience as far as every bit of engagement? You know, do you hand them a drink when they walk in? Do they get to talk to somebody right away? What does that look like? And how can you replicate that online? So I always tell people, write a few keywords when you're describing this or visualizing this in your head about what this environment in this space should look like. And the next step is to have a few trusted resources at your fingertips. And this probably shouldn't be friends, to be honest with you. You know, if it's a couple friends, they likely have a different subjective design aesthetic. So you want to find people that have engaged with your brand. Maybe you have a past bride or groom who really was your ideal demographic and is now more of a friend than just a previous customer. And ask these people to tell you the first 3 words that come to mind when they look at your site. And if you're worried about people sort of just trying to be nice, you could send out an anonymous survey if you wanted to do that, and collect just people's initial one answer or one question answers and compare them. And if they are similar, obviously you're headed in the right direction. If they are not, you have some work to do. And that's really the key to differentiation on the visual standpoint for design. So once your design is in place and everything's looking on brand, then you have to start asking yourself from a visual perspective, what's the goal? What do people always ask you when they meet you? What do they say is important to them? What are they confused by? What are they hesitant about? What are your pain points? And what do they always say they loved about you? And think of places in the process that they normally bring this up. So when you're sitting at a table at a coffee shop or in your retail space where you can actually talk to somebody, and when is that point of sale? When do they decide you just sold me, and you're able to make that sort of initiative to try and get them to sign the contract? What does that look like? And if it's normally when you show them a certain portfolio and you're scanning through it on your iPad and showing them the work that you've done, or something like that, that always is the selling attribute, that's where you want to think, on my website, when people are viewing that page, I need a call to action at that point that says contact us or request a copy of our service kit, something like that, that gives them the next step to click on. Alternatively, if there's always a point in the process where people have questions, for instance, your services page or your services when you're talking to somebody about your different packages, if there's always questions that pop up when you're talking about your packages, that's a really great place for you to then put something like a chat box on your site, so that when they're looking at that page of your site and reviewing your services and they have that question, they don't just leave your site. Instead, they're able to jump on that chat and get an answer to their question. And I know the chat box always seems overwhelming to people when I say that, but right now we're all at home for the most part. So if you have the time, it's a great time to add one on there. We'll talk about that in a little bit too, but it doesn't have to be for good. Try it out and see if people will respond to that. So once you've answered all of those questions and you've thought about what it all looks like, you're able to kind of create a path that your users will follow. And that's how you'll determine where those buttons go on the site and where people should be flowing through the site. On a typical event industry website, the most attractive pages are normally a home page, services page, portfolio page, and contact. This varies for everyone, of course, but these are just the most frequented in a lot of sites that we do. And so you want to make sure those are easy to get to and very clear in answering every question somebody may have when they get to those. So how do you know what your popular pages are? If you aren't using an analytics tool yet, you absolutely should. You really shouldn't be doing any sort of digital marketing campaign without it. So Google Analytics is my preferred. That's what the screenshot is from. So you can always go to analytics.google.com. You can get a free account with them, and that will allow you to see the statistics of what's happening on your site. So when you do that, you're able to see how many users are on your site at any given time, where they came from, how they found you, where they left your site on, which is really important. We want to know where the drop-off points are so we can fix those, how long they're staying on your site, and what the bounce rate is. So a bounce rate is when people leave before they've even gone past the homepage. So if we see a high bounce rate, for instance, we know there's a problem with our homepage. We know people are possibly not seeing it correctly. Maybe it's not rendering correctly on mobile, or maybe it's not loading quickly enough. So there's all these factors and insights we can find from Google Analytics or any analytics tool that you absolutely want to have this on here and just kind of take a look into how people are behaving and interacting with your site. Google reports that 40% of mobile consumers turn to a competitor's site after a bad mobile experience. So this is another huge factor anytime we're auditing a website, is we want to make sure it displays correctly on all devices. More than likely, you're getting at least half your traffic now from mobile. So if you don't know for sure if it's looking correct on multiple devices other than your own, you can always go to this link here that I've put in the notes, and you can type in your website URL and it will tell you and show you exactly how your site looks on the different devices. So this is really helpful for you just to check and make sure everything's in good shape and people are seeing it correctly. Another audit point is we always look at whether or not your site has an SSL. So that is a simple fix that you guys can call your hosting provider with, and like GoDaddy or whoever you use, and you can simply request an SSL. And when you buy that, it's somewhere between about $50 and $100 per year. They tie it into your site, and then this handy little chat box or pop-up box doesn't come up anymore. So obviously you don't want this popping up before somebody gets to your site. They'll probably leave. They will not likely click through the advanced and go through that and actually visit your site. So simple fix, you can get that installed onto your site, and it'll also help you in the search ranks. Understanding your load time. So it's all obviously very important if we only have those 3 seconds to make sure your site is loading quickly. If it's not loading quickly, one of the biggest suspects is generally the image size. We're all pretty image heavy sites in the event industry. So check that first. You know, if you have a slow load time, you want to make sure your images are web resolution. Web resolution is 72 dpi. So if it's not web resolution, that's likely slowing your site down and causing some challenges for people to view it. So after you've done the sort of basic audit, and obviously an audit can be more in depth than what we just went through, but those are the basics that you can be doing from home right now. You want to start figuring out ways to engage with your target customer and your demographic. So this seems very overwhelming for people when I say, you know, we have to put some content out there. That's how we're going to get people to connect with your brand and bring more traffic in. So the best way to start doing that is to create a publication calendar. And this is really just a simple solution that can help you plan, create, and schedule, and really even analyze what's working, what times work best for you to post, and all that kind of stuff. So we do have a free sample you can download if you wanted to do that. You can download this template on our site here. And that's where you can go in and actually put your topics that you're going to post about, and also the theme, which is really important for us with a lot of our clients, is it makes it much easier and more approachable to go through a publication calendar with somebody if we assign sort of themes to the days of the week. So, you know, if we're doing like a vendor-focused post on every Thursday, or a testimonial on every Tuesday, or a sort of gallery reveal on Saturdays. Things like that will help us really stay organized on this and not make you have to feel like you're coming up with new content constantly and new ideas constantly. And once we have the publication calendar in place, we want to make sure that every touch point, everything we're pushing out there into the marketplace speaks to your reader's emotional state. So right now, people are feeling, and this is primarily more in the wedding realm than just the events, but they're feeling anxious, stressed, confused, still in love, and they want to feel more comforted, they want clarity, and they want to have hope of their events. So one person that I feel like, and I'm hoping that a lot of you have seen this, I'm going to switch my windows over, is John Krasinski from The Office, who, this is going to shut off for just a second so you guys know. Okay. Can you guys see that? Okay, so he's done an amazing job at really capturing what people need to hear right now. So he's done this web broadcast, SGN, short for Some Good News. And he's really just putting out these feel-good messages that make people want to hear more. So I'm going to play just a small little clip about one that he did in the wedding world.
And not even quarantine can stop one of life's greatest opportunities to celebrate love: weddings. With this ring, you may now kiss your bride.
Do you reaffirm your promise to Dad and to put your full faith and trust in him so long as you both shall live? Dad?
I do.
Question, yeah.
And now on a personal.
Okay, so that's just a short clip. You guys should absolutely check this out if you haven't yet. But this is, he just puts this out in every single episode he does, goes viral completely. And it's obviously he's got the fame behind it, but he also is just connecting with people and able to really show people what they need to hear right now. So on a smaller scale, consider trying to do some of those things in your own brand and speaking to your audience and telling them, you know, the things that they want to hear right now and those messages that appeal to their emotional state right now, the comfort, the clarity, and the hope that they're wanting to hear. So on average, you need to put out about, well, people need to experience about 8 different touch points with your brand before they decide to take the next step. So when we're talking about the amount of places you need to put your content that you're coming up with and your messaging that you're coming up with, it's going to seem like a lot, but it's also, you know, the same sort of content being pushed into different places. So you're not having to write new content for every single platform, every social outlet or anything like that. So the best way to do it is to come up with a list of the places your target demographic really spends their time online. So depending on, you know, your age of your demographic and all of that, think about the right social platform. If it's Facebook, if it's Instagram, if it's TikTok, I'm hoping I don't have to really get into that, but most of the time your demographic is living on like the Instagram, the Pinterest of the world, and their parents are now living on Facebook. So depending on the content you're putting out there, you absolutely want to make sure it's targeted. So if we put something out there on behalf of one of our clients into the Facebook world, we're talking directly to the parents and making sure that it's targeted to them as opposed to the potential couple that we might be working with. So here are just some ideas of places. All of the social platforms are an obvious one there. Any sort of Wedding Wire, the Knot directory sites, search engines, of course, blog content, and then, you know, looking at who those micro influencers are in your network and seeing if you can't even connect with some of them or digital publications that you might also be able to take advantage of. In addition to all of that, you also need to be building your own list. So this is what you get to hold on to, and it's a powerful resource because it's people who have already opted into hearing your content. They want to know more. So beyond just pushing content out there, gather those email addresses and use programs such as MailChimp or Constant Contact, and you can integrate these little pop-ups onto your site and just be strategic about where you put those on your site. If you don't think it's something where somebody's going to be interested in on the homepage, you don't have to put this on your homepage. Maybe it's on the blog page of your site when they're looking at inspiration or other things like that, where you can integrate this and really start collecting email addresses. Nobody wants to sign up for an email list if they don't get something out of it. So you'll also want to be sure that you're giving them something in return for this, whether it's information or, you know, a consultation or whatever you want to frame that like. Make sure that you're giving them an incentive there. So an example campaign, after we put our publication calendar together, we've known where to put stuff, and a campaign for us, for one of our clients, would potentially be top 5 things you should know about planning your wedding post-COVID-19. So with that, you'd want to, of course, establish your goal. You want to reach couples who have postponed their wedding or will begin planning soon, have a budget to do so, but don't know where to start with all of the new regulations and rules and all of that. So you would start by putting this content on your site. Again, your website is your hub for all of this content. It's the house for everything. So you want to be sure to put some sort of blog post or page together on your site using at least 300 words on it so that it's a little bit more beneficial for SEO purposes. And then you'll want to create campaigns off of your site. Nobody's just going to stumble upon it on your site if you're not pushing it out. So you put it on your site and then develop some graphics and put that out into the Facebook world, the Instagram world, any other social platforms we talked about. You'll also want to put a Pinterest graphic together and make sure you direct people back to that specific link on your site. Creating a newsletter, if you do have that list built, or use this potentially to try and start building the list. Create an audience profile if you're doing any sort of paid ads that you can bring in. And then again, connect with additional people, social group leaders, digital publications, micro-influencers. See where you can connect with them and, you know, if your content will be beneficial to them. So an example of how you would do this. If you write your new blog post, then you would put your graphic together that you then send out in a mass email. You would also do your graphics that you're going to space out through Instagram. You would then do some sort of Pinterest graphic, and it doesn't have to be completely styled out like this in terms of, you know, graphics and things like that. You can use images. You can use platforms such as like Canva and platforms that are accessible to everyone, and you don't need any design experience to do. And then you can create these graphics and drive that traffic back into the blog post. But the key to all of this is making sure that all of these little pieces that you've put out into the marketplace are pointing back to your site. You want people to get back to your site and eventually convert to be a lead for you. Okay, so beyond the engagement, you want to create that convenience. So this is, I think, where a lot of people fall off, is forgetting how convenient online can be for you and how many steps can really just be removed once you've gotten some of this stuff automated. So you put out a blog post on your site. You want to make sure these simple things are in place. You want to make sure that the post is shareable. So making sure that you have the little icons under it so people know that they can share it is an easy solution for that. Also making sure your images are pinnable. And this is always the big controversy of people saying they don't want their images pinned or people are stealing them. They're going to do it anyway. So I'd rather personally somebody pin from our website so that it links back to our website and is, you know, pointing back to us. So definitely pin it button on everything and share buttons on everything. In addition, you always want to make sure that you're tagging all of the vendors. This is pretty straightforward, that were involved in the project with you. This not only makes people happy, but it will also allow you to get additional shares because people want their work out there as well. Okay, instant gratification. This is huge right now. So we talked a little bit about the chat box earlier. This is an easy platform. Drift is the resource we use. There are a bunch of free ones out there. So you can go to these platforms and you can integrate these little chat features, even just temporarily while we are all more focused on being at home. You can integrate those into your site. And then you can put them strategically on the pages where people will have questions. For instance, like the example earlier with the services page. Or if you're somebody like us who works a lot after with referrals, we put it front and center when somebody gets to our site, because we know people get here and they really want to contact right away for the most part if they've already decided, you know, this is who I want to talk to. So we put it front and center so that they can jump in this right away and don't have to wait for anything. Beyond the chat feature, auto responders are huge and time saving, big time. So putting autoresponders on your contact forms can be a really great benefit to you. And that can be as simple as a text autoresponder, or it can be a video autoresponder, talking to them, engaging with them, letting them get to know you better. It can be a next steps. So where, for instance, they fill out a contact form and then you know they're engaged with your brand. Maybe you have a more in-depth creative brief like we do, or if you're a DJ, maybe it's something where it asks them more about their music preferences. And this is a good way to keep them going down that pipeline and understand how serious they are about your services. You know, if they've gone to that second step, they're likely a lot more engaged than somebody who's only filled out the contact form and said, how much does it cost? So doing that, also giving them an option. If they don't want to do the next step, but maybe they just want to follow you on social media, then you've already hooked them. So they're already this far. You want to give them a next step to do. Another great platform that can allow some automation is Calendly. This is the platform we use, and we use it on a lot of our clients' websites. It allows it to integrate directly with your email calendar, like G Suite or whoever you use, so that it can be certain time slots that you set as available. And when somebody gets that auto response, it also includes your calendar link. So when it happens, somebody can automatically think they already responded to me, and here's my calendar link, I've set up my appointment, and you didn't have to do anything. All of it's automated. So those are all steps that you can bring in that really simplify the process and keep people happy, because they want an auto response. They want something instant gratification. Show how you have adapted and stayed organized during the process. Using tools like Zoom are the obvious, you know, something where you can be connected with people without having to be face-to-face. The other thing is telling people that you use Zoom. So when you say request a complimentary consultation, people don't want to have to assume that they're going to have to meet you in person right now. So make sure that it's front and center, that you can do your work and you're offering to do this virtually if they'd like to. So putting that front and center, again, doing some pre-recorded videos or some timed auto emails are really helpful during this time. So if you wanted to pre-record and set some responses to go out, platforms like G Suite or whoever you're using for your email provider, most of them do it now. You can go in, and as soon as you get a client come in, you can schedule 15 emails that you want to go to them over the course of however long you want to. So whether that's to celebrate certain milestones in their planning process or just in their life in general, birthday messages, things like that, you can schedule all of these. You can also use tools like Dubsado or any of those to do a lot of the automation and that sort of drip messaging that way too. So you can do, this is an example of a custom portal. You can do all of this type of stuff through a Dubsado or any of those out there. And the obvious that I feel like everyone's coming to us for right now is sell something if you can. So a case study, we had a florist come to us, and you know, she had nothing going for a while because everything was completely canceled, and she wanted to just do a quick e-commerce launch. So we added it to her site, and in 16 days she saw a 750 times return on her investment. So this is something that could help you with the stock that you might have of certain things depending on what you do, or you know, if you're offering different types of services, maybe you don't have a product that you can actually sell. Maybe you can do gift cards. Maybe you can do that kind of stuff online, but giving them something to support you online, people want to support small business right now. So see where you can sell something if possible, and get that live. And inspiring referrals. So again, people don't necessarily think to do this off the bat unless you ask them for it. So now is a great time to set this up in your process where you can set these pop-up windows or set these automated emails to ask them to refer you. And there are a little bit more complicated programs that you can use that are more conditional, where you ask people how their review was of your service, and then if they say it was great, then it takes them down the pipeline of going ahead and, you know, putting you into the pipeline to do a Google review or whatever. But if they say it wasn't great, then, you know, it's a whole different pipeline they go down so that you don't end up with bad reviews. But there are also just some simple things you can do, like create graphics and send them through emails whenever you are done with a process that sends somebody directly to your links when you know you're going to get a good review out of it. So using that, automating those, and making sure that you're building that review base can not only help your online presence, but really helps your search rank too, to have those good reviews out there. So in a nutshell, those are some simple things that you guys can do from home as far as auditing your site, engaging with your target audience, and creating that convenience and that line of communication for people to feel like they can trust working with you right now. So I'm going to open it up here to questions. And I know there were a lot of links in those slides, so I think you guys are going to share the slides, but if not, you can always send me direct communication. I can share links too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nikki. A really detailed and helpful, informative, tactical, strategic presentation. So thank you for that. I'll just jump right into the Q&A and we'll knock some of those out. So Susan McAvoy has asked, are people reading blogs anymore?
That's what I just saw when I clicked over to the questions. So I'm glad you asked that. So we don't call them blogs a lot of times anymore because people have that like preconceived notion about what a blog is anymore. A lot of times we'll call it inspiration or something like that, but there's no beating around the bush at how beneficial they are to your brand and your website presence. So you need a blog, whether you're calling it a blog or not. It helps your site go from this basic 10-page looking site to a site that's more dynamic and has a lot more going on, and to the search engines looks a lot bigger.
Great. And so thank you for that. If we dig a bit deeper into what we think maybe Susan's asking, so you know, there's a new way we interact with all information online. We want quick hits. We want to understand what the writer is trying to tell us and pull that information in 10 seconds or less. So how do blogs, let's just call them blogs, how do blogs that we might write now going forward look differently than they did a couple years ago? Is it simply the length or the format?
Well, you need the length for the search engines. So you need that basic 300 words or more for the search engines. Yeah. More is better for them. So you absolutely want that. But yes, I agree with you that people aren't sitting there reading every word of it. You're writing it so that you can get traffic, and then you hope that people are finding it valuable, of course. Yeah. So bullet points are huge. Reiterating that in length for the search engines below the bullet points, you know, provide the cliff notes. So it's easy for people.
Great. Okay, awesome. Okay, so Jeff Frank asks, I'm an independent contractor event producer whose portfolio only exists on LinkedIn so far. Do you recommend a separate website, Squarespace, etc., to drive engagement, or is LinkedIn professionally good enough for freelancers? And says, if so, what platforms do you recommend?
Yeah, so I think everyone needs a website, and they're accessible enough that you do at this point. So even if LinkedIn is your main way to connect with people, that's all that is. That you don't own any of that. That's your connection resource that should drive traffic to your site. So it absolutely makes you feel a lot more legitimate and professional. As far as platforms, we are about 90% WordPress. That's where we focus on almost entirely. The reason for that is because it searches really well, and it's, you know, something where we can create custom designs on every single site. But yeah. Squarespace isn't, there's nothing wrong with Squarespace. You know, there's a lot of great websites in Squarespace. We do use Shopify for some of our bigger e-commerce sites also. Mm-hmm. I think the platform absolutely depends on what you're looking for and how involved you're going to be in ongoing management on it.
Got it. Okay, great. Perfect. Okay, Lynette McDonald, what was the program that you mentioned for the pipeline regarding reviews?
So we always do this, if you're a WordPress user, we do it with a conditional form, which is like, it's called a Contact Form 7 plugin. That's probably a little more in-depth than you want to go on your own. So there are a bunch of them out there. I don't have any handy, but you can just Google reviews plugins, and you can tie them in. It's a service that you can purchase, and then it'll split basically. So if somebody says they had a good experience, here's the pipeline.
Great, thanks. Okay, if you're low, or Jeff Hudson asks, if you're low on time, what's most important to focus on? social posting, blogging, website updating, SEO, etc. He's asking for priorities.
Yeah, prioritize. I mean, I feel like social is the necessary evil. I don't love it either, but we have to put it out there because that's really the way we stay relevant with people. I do think if you're just posting social for the likes, you're not really gaining much from that.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would prefer to have more of a strategy in place and post less, but more quality, and make sure it's driving back to somewhere. So if it were me, I would prioritize, let's say, one content piece per month, and it doesn't have to be huge, but and then share the same thing on all your platforms.
Yes.
And reshare. You know, it doesn't have to be the same thing. Think about the fact that only a tiny percentage of the amount of people that follow you are seeing your post every time. So you can absolutely reshare it on the other platforms you use, as well as like stories versus feed and all that.
Great. Jim has asked, does your blog need to be a part of your website or a separate website?
Part of your website. You want everything on one domain, everything in one house, everything's working together. Back to Jeff. Sorry, I should have said this. If you're not using something like a Latergram or any of those apps out there, Planoly, any of those that will do this for you, I think it's almost impossible to manage your social day to day and actually be engaged with everything. So with any client that we work with, we use one of those apps where we plan out 30 days in advance for the most part. And that can schedule onto your Pinterest and your Instagram and all of those resources so that you aren't doing that every single day.
Great. And can you list off a couple of your favorite apps you use for clients?
Yeah, we use Latergram. So that one, I think there's a free option on it. We have it on our recommended page on our site too. That's if you wanted to click through on that, you can see a link directly to that. Planoly, a lot of people use, and there's a handful of them out there, but those are really the only two that I really ever gotten into.
Great. Okay, great. So Susie is asking, you just mentioned WordPress, Squarespace, Shopify. We are currently rebuilding our website and pivoting to food delivery in addition to events and catering. Which would you use?
I'd probably use WordPress for that because it is something where you could have the custom site and then have I'm guessing you're using an app or a plugin that integrates the food delivery. So most of the time, WordPress is huge. You know, they have APIs and tie-ins for everything. So I would assume that that would be the one that ties in easiest with that. It just depends on what you're using for the food delivery, I guess.
Great. Okay, so a little bit more on Squarespace. Everyone's interested in a website, which is great. Grace is asking, I missed what you said, just said about Squarespace. Is Squarespace not a good website? Why or why not?
Squarespace is great in terms of design. So I feel like a lot of photographers use Squarespace. It's something that they have great templates out there that you can use. So, and it's, you know, it's something that you can edit really easily. I would say if you're going to try and do this on your own and it's something you're going to tackle as, let me sit in front of my computer and just figure it out, Squarespace is a good option. If you're wanting to bring a team on that's got, you know, functions and custom things that you want done, and you're more concerned with all of that, I would say WordPress is the best option.
Sounds good. I'm certainly not a pro, but last fall when I founded my business after being corporate for a long time, I use Squarespace. It integrates a blog really easily. I do have a small team of people that support me that know how to do the things I don't do, but it gives me access every day to go in and update copy on things I need, so I can eliminate some of the paid support from a team. It's if there's things that I know I'm just going to always do, which is write copy. So I certainly vouch for Squarespace without any sort of e-commerce integrated into my platform. Go ahead.
E-commerce, I would absolutely say like Shopify or WordPress are your only two options there. And Shopify, if you have a lot of SKUs and a huge product list, that's the way to go. If it's like WordPress is all about custom. You know, you can absolutely have your easy to edit text and photos and all of that kind of stuff. That's all something that is the beauty of WordPress, but you're not going to be able to necessarily go in and create custom pages and things like that on your own.
Yeah, for sure. So give and take on each platform. Chloe's asking, do you need a Google or Yelp page if you don't have brick and mortar, and how do you do that?
Yeah, I feel like everybody would despise me if I said anything positive about Yelp right now, but Yelp is I mean, it's like everyone's evil. Nobody likes Yelp because they have like one bad review that always seems made up and it always stays on the top. So I'm not a huge fan of Yelp. Google reviews, absolutely you should have. You know, that's something that is front and center when people search for you. So I would say you send people, if they're giving you reviews, you'd send them to Google to put your review up.
Yeah.
And, you know, because it's in your market, like Wedding Wire or any of those that they're living on also.
Great. Perfect. So Kimberly Bone has asked, how important is Pinterest? And I think she's specifically asking in terms of the event management and event professional industry. Is it valuable for corporate? So if your client base is corporate, or more on the social side?
Okay. So Pinterest is the forgotten platform. We love Pinterest as digital marketers. So it gives us a ton of more exposure that we can get than if we try and, for instance, if we buy an ad on, I should have done a case study on this, but if we buy an ad on Instagram, we tend to get much, much fewer views on it than we do on Pinterest. Now, Pinterest is less qualified because Instagram is already, you know, people that live and breathe our brands for the most part. But you do get a ton of engagement from Pinterest that can then lead to likes and follows and links into your website. So I think any brand could use Pinterest that has anybody in their demographic looking at it. Corporate is a little more of a challenge because, you know, those people aren't necessarily going to be going to Pinterest for inspiration. They're kind of looking more to you, to what you want to do for their event. 100% in the wedding world, it should be one of your top platforms.
Yeah, totally agree. From my perspective, 90% of my clients are large corporate. There's still humans and individuals inside of the teams at corporations, and they're they can be interested in visual mediums and design, but you're right. It's not necessarily the selling mechanism. It would be more just about to continue to tell the story of how you see the world as a professional. So it's like, depending on how much time you have available or resources to running a social strategy, maybe Pinterest doesn't fall as high, but there might still be value. I personally don't use Pinterest, but that's just because I'm bad at those things. But okay.
It's so automated though. I mean, if you are using like the Latergram or anything like that, basically all the content that you're already putting out everywhere else, you can just funnel into it. And I think, what is it, Tailwind, that a lot of people use for Pinterest, where it repins things over and over. So there's a lot of automation that you can do there too.
Awesome. We should we'll do a session on Pinterest later this summer. Okay, 2 final questions about sharing here. So will the recording be available on ileahub.com? Absolutely. So we'll download it after this, get it up onto the website by end of business tomorrow. So on ileahub.com, click at the Coronavirus Resources for Event Profs link and just scroll down to recorded webinars. And then, so that's that question. Grace has asked about a specific slide. So you showed a screenshot of a report, not Google Analytics. I think there's an interest potentially in either gaining access to your template, or let us know if you're planning on sharing any of this information afterwards.
So the Google Analytics one, I'm slightly confused here. So there was a screenshot of Google Analytics, and that was just a client's screenshot, like a live shot of what I saw on there. So you would see that individually on your own website if that's what you're asking. If you're asking about the template download of the publication calendar, that is something that we just have on our website. And you can just, even if you are on our Instagram and you click on link in bio, you see the link to it there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. So we're at the end of our questions here. It looks like we covered everything. I'll let you, is there any final thoughts you want as you unshare your screen and we round out the edges of this presentation?
I don't think so. I appreciate everybody coming. And like I said, taking the time. I know we all have a million things going on right now. And if you're anything like me, it's making sure no child runs in here in the middle of this. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nikki. Really appreciate it. I know you're a friend to the organization. Your name came highly recommended. So really appreciate you bringing us this time and expertise, and to give event profs access to this kind of thinking and tactics and strategy right now is really useful. So thank you. So a couple of upcoming pieces of information. On Friday of this week, 3 o'clock Central, we are back on the grid with our Clear Head, Strong Mind mindset series. So this is moderated and led by our longtime friend of the organization, certified performance coach, Angela Braun. So we're picking up steam again, talking about a growth mindset. So some skills, in your toolkit to grow your growth mindset, and also some science behind why that will aid us in recovery and rebuilding in the industry as individuals. So we invite you to join us. Bring your friends, bring your family, bring your clients. It's open to anybody. Registration's open, so hit up ileahub.com. And we, on Friday, will also share with you the roadmap for content for the next eight weeks around Clear Head, Strong Mind. So if you're interested in some coaching, free coaching, tapping into a longtime expert in the mindset field, please join us. We also have just put together the finishing touches on a session for next week, Tuesday, May 26th, 11:30 Central Time. I know it's slightly earlier than this time slot, so grab your coffee. We are bringing together a couple different major brands in the venue hotel side of the world. So we're going to talk about all things venue considerations. It's not just a call for venue professionals. If you're an event prof, if you work inside of a venue, which I think all event profs do in some way, shape, or form, we invite you to come join the conversation. There's been a lot of hunger around this topic about how will COVID-19 shape what venue management and partnering with venues looks like from a safety, health, protocol standpoint. So please come join us and watch your inboxes later this week for registration to open. And as always, you guys know that we've got a really well sorted page on ileahub.com of a ton of COVID-19 resources for whoever and whatever role you play in the industry and wherever you live in the world. There's a bunch of great resources online. It's always being updated. Don't forget to click on the support for an initiative form. If there's something going on in your market or in your government that you want us to take a look at, we can put some engine behind it. So that lives on the website. If we obviously have My Community, the platform for members, tons of great conversation going on in there. A lot of support that we see all day long. So it's a really cool platform if you haven't jumped in there yet. Of course, your chapter will be hosting virtual events and meetings, and most chapters around the world are hosting meetings with no need to be a member of that chapter. So you can join in any topic that interests you, as well as these webinars hosted by our ILEA International team. If you're on Facebook, join the ILEA Member Connect Facebook group, also to stay connected to information and connected to the industry. That's all we got for you guys. So have a great rest of your day. Have a great rest of your week. Kareen, thank you so much for being here. Another webinar in the books for us. And Nikki, thank you again for all of your time and your expertise. It was just exactly what we were hoping you'd bring today. So we'll call it a wrap, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.